Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Saturday, January 23rd, 2021. I am Andrew Hansen alongside Shane Caldwell, and it's Championship Sunday. Shane, we only have 3 games left in this NFL season, 2 of them tomorrow, and they feature 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and 2 of the greatest young quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I am fired up for this 2-game slate.
Yeah, I'm loving this slate because I love Championship Sunday. The teams have so much to play for the right to play in the Super Bowl, and then you combine that with great matchup, the Battle of the Bays there in Green Bay, and you have 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So really, you can't take that for granted. Being able to watch 2 of the greatest of all time battle in this type of game, in this type of environment, and then if you look at young, talented, quarterbacks, it starts with Mahomes and now Josh Allen in the second game, with Buffalo getting back to the AFC Championship for the first time in, several decades now. So it's exciting that everything, the dynamics and everything involved with this. But, these quarterback matchups and the amount of stars in these matchups and so much on the line, this is going to be an awesome slate. So we're fired up for it.
Yeah, we really are. And hopefully everybody will stay healthy. Last week, it feels like it was about 6 weeks ago, but that last slate, I had a lot of Mahomes, and I did not enjoy seeing him get concussed and leave early because he was rolling. And, when you lose, you miss out on cashing by just a hair, and your pay-up quarterback doesn't get to play the full game. It's rough. And then from the vantage point of just enjoying the games. So that's what I'm hoping for this week is if we just get everybody healthy, play a full game, we could have 2 classic battles here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how healthy Mahomes is. We don't really know in terms of that toe. We'll talk about that when we talk about the second game. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I think he's going to be okay, but I don't know. You hear about turf toe injuries and those type of things and how they affect quarterbacks and skill positions. That's a little iffy there.
Absolutely. So that's true. We will get to that in game 2. We'll go in order here with the kickoff. And of course, it is the Battle of the Bays at 3:05 Eastern as Tampa Bay goes into Lambeau. And right now on BetUS.com.pa, they are our presenting sponsor. Green Bay favored by 3.5, over under 52. And game 2, very similar. The Chiefs on their home field favored by 3 with an over under 54.5. So pretty balanced here, Shane. And in terms of the weather, looks like we may get some snow overnight in Green Bay, but should be clear by game time. Kind of normal temperatures up there, mid-20s, not too windy. So I think it'll be pretty solid playing conditions. You may see a little bit of snow around the field, but I think the playing surface will be good to go. So these guys can work on that passing game. So in terms of the injuries here on Championship Sunday on the Tampa Bay side, of course, we've got Antonio Brown out. And then Green Bay is missing their tackle Bakhtiari. So other than that, these teams are pretty healthy. Why don't you start with game 1 here and give us a feel for how you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting matchup. I think Green Bay is a favorite for the reason. Green Bay is really hot right now. Tampa Bay is finally starting to play good as well. I think it comes down to me. I don't know if I love the Tampa Bay passing game. I think that I'd like a couple of their wide receivers, but as I've discussed the last few weeks, I think Green Bay is pretty good at combining their coverage and their pass rush here. So, and Tom Brady is great at picking it apart, but I just think that the type of coverage that Green Bay runs in their pass rush, it's going to cause problems for Tom Brady. He's down one of his, better receivers, Antonio Brown. That less weapons, and they can, the coverage dilemma every week when they play Green Bay. Who's Jair Alexander going to cover? If they're just lining up on their sides, then Mike Evans, for example, will avoid some of Jair Alexander. So we don't really know what they're going to do there. You would think they would just shadow Mike Evans with Jair Alexander, but they haven't done that a lot this year. And Mike Evans has a huge size advantage over him, but Alexander has been tough all year on coverage. So that's the tricky part. But I think Mike Evans is going to see a lot of Alexander. If he avoids him, though, and lines up in the slot or they're just playing sides, then Mike Evans could have a huge game here. So Mike Evans is in play, but I'm a little nervous. And I think, like a lot of people breaking out this matchup, you got to probably prefer Godwin. He's mostly in the slot. And Green Bay's been pretty decent in the slot to opposing wide receivers, but I just feel like Godwin's going to be a target monster, and there's going to be so many targets funneled to him, and he's their best playmaker, outside of Mike Evans here. So I just think the matchup and the situation for Godwin with Antonio Brown being out, I think Godwin's the best play here. And then if you're trying to go value, I mean, they're going to have, probably Tyler Johnson out there and also Scotty Miller. But I don't know if I'm going to be involved with those guys too much because, again, they're going to be facing pretty tough coverage. They might have Alexander on them, some of the snaps there. And I just think that the targets are going to be funneled to Mike Evans and Godwin so much that I don't know if I want to hit those value guys. But they are minimal price, so it only takes a few big plays for them. And then the other thing that I can look at in the passing game, if you want to go value, I'm not really big on Gronkowski here because what I noticed is they really need his blocking skills. He's really good as a pass protector and a run blocker, and he's been so good at it that they've just had him do that the majority of the time. So I think that Cameron Brate's coming on strong as a receiving tight end, and Green Bay's decent, but I think that's another weapon with Antonio Brown down. I think the receiving tight end, which lately has been Cameron Brate, he could get more targets here. So if you wanted a low ownership punt type play, you could look at Cameron Brate here as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in the passing game there. So I'm mostly interested in Godwin, but if you're making multiple lineups, obviously you could throw some Mike Evans. I'm not really that interested in Brady because of the other quarterbacks involved in the matchups they're involved in what I'm looking at for the projection. And then it comes down to the Tampa Bay running game. I think Tampa Bay can run on Green Bay. I think they have a pretty good threat of pass and run with Tampa Bay. And I think Tom Brady does a good job getting him into the right run plays at the right time. So I think Tampa Bay, I like their offensive line. I like their running game. Then it comes down to, are you looking at Fournette or Ronald Jones? Now, Fournette's looked a lot better lately, and he's obviously the pass catching back as well. But Fournette's going to be a lot more expensive than Ronald Jones, and he's going to get a much higher ownership, right? So yeah, you got to hope that if you're paying up for Fournette at the ownership, that he does hit, because you can make the argument to fade Fournette and go to Ronald Jones as a pivot, get him at lower ownership and a lower price. And Ronald Jones, a little bit touchdown dependent, obviously probably not going to catch any passes. But I could see Ronald Jones, even though he's a little banged up, I could see him busting off like a 20 or 30-yard touchdown or getting a couple goal line carries because he's also, a pretty big physical back, but Fournette's also, it's not like he's small either, right? So that's the only dilemma there is if you play Fournette at high ownership and Ronald Jones gets a touchdown, that's going to really hurt you. But if you play Ronald Jones, it's much higher risk, more GPP, and he gets the touchdown, you have leverage on all those Fournette lineups, which will probably be like, 50% plus. So that's the dilemma there. I know you're, not to give it away, I know you're leaning one way there in that. So what do you think about this Tampa Bay offense here?
Yeah, well, I am leaning Fournette. And it's kind of funny because this reminds me of the discussion we've had about the Baltimore running backs recently with Dobbins and Edwards. And very similar with Dobbins more expensive, but Edwards getting carries. And, in the recent weeks, you were kind of leaning Dobbins. I was leaning Edwards on the savings and hoping that Edwards would get the TD. And then all of a sudden you've got a steal there. So it is similar here. I mean, their pricing's a little bit closer on DraftKings. There's more of a gap on Fanduel. So you're right. I mean, if Jones gets the touchdown, then Fournette's in trouble. But seeing Jones come up lame there in that last round, I'm just a little bit concerned about his health. So I'm leaning Fournette here. And he's probably my favorite target on Tampa Bay. I mean, I was all over Akers last week, and he looked great, 5 yards a carry. And I think this is the way that Tampa, the old classic, let's run it, let's run the clock, let's keep it out of Rodgers' hands. And like you said, Green Bay's been really tough against the pass, it's kind of surprising to me. They've only given up one 300-yard passing game all season. And that was Deshaun Watson in that shootout, and he barely got over 300. So I agree. I'm not on Tom Brady this week, and it's more of a one-off with the pass catchers. Godwin is my favorite as well for the reasons you mentioned. You look at what Woods did last week, especially in PPR. 8 for 48. I think Godwin can do something similar. Maybe not quite that many catches, but I could see him going for six for 60 and a touchdown. And I just have a little bit more faith in him. Um, and Evans, like you said, I think that'll be an interesting little cat and mouse game because he lines up pretty evenly in terms of left, right in the slot. And so, what will happen this week? Where do they put him? Does Alexander come and try to shadow him? But I think it is safest to go with Godwin. And then the tight ends, in the last couple weeks, Brait really has been more consistent. He's got the much better floor than Gronk, but I'm a little hesitant to go there. If I had to play one tight end for Tampa, I'm going to go Gronk here probably, just because a trip to the Super Bowl is on the line. Brady and Gronk have done it so many times, and Gronk has still been getting end zone targets. And we've said on recent podcasts that he is kind of more touchdown dependent for his upside, but he's the one really getting more targets there than Brait. So if you're looking for a cheaper tight end here with more upside, I think you want to go Gronk. If you're just trying to go for a decent floor, you could look at Brait, but there's a couple other price tags I like for tight ends a little bit better than Brait. Over on the Green Bay side, Shane, looking like probably a little bit better situation for Rodgers in terms of throwing the ball than Brady here. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I'm loving the situation for Aaron Rodgers because he's been the most efficient quarterback all year. I mean, he's had a passer rating over 120. He's had a completion percentage of like 70%. I mean, he's just been absolutely on fire all year. So he's been the most efficient, really the best overall quarterback, and they've been really balanced. They can run the ball and pass the ball, so they haven't had to just sling the ball because their defense has been good. But in this type of matchup, you got the number one DVOA Buccaneers run defense there. Buccaneers run defense then gets Vita Vea back, who's a big run stuff and D tackle in there. So they're really tough to run the ball on, and Green Bay knows that. Green Bay will exploit matchups elsewhere. So because of that, we're looking at high volume for Aaron Rodgers, and I think that the Bucks. I don't think the Bucks secondary matches up that great. I think that a lot of people talked about how the Bucks did good against Michael Thomas last week, but then shut down Michael Thomas. But then we hear Michael Thomas has been injured all week. Drew Brees looks basically done, and so it's not the same thing comparing this Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams, which is probably the number one duo in the league right now, if not of all time. And you're trying to. I don't think anyone can cover Davante Adams. That's kind of what I'm trying to say here.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think Carlton or Dean or these guys can cover him because those are like big physical corners, those Buccaneers guys. So like against like a slant, like physical Michael Thomas type guy who's injured, you can stop him. But the release that Davante Adams has and his footwork and his route running and his quickness and his connection with Aaron Rodgers is like, next world level, right? So he's uncoverable. So when you have a bigger physical corner, he's not going to be able to keep up with Davante Adams. Now, interesting, Davante Adams had a subpar game last time out against them. What was it? You probably had the stats. What was it,
6 for 61?
Catches? Yeah, subpar game, right? But then you look, Davante Adams was injured right before that. It was his first game back, getting into full swing of things. So he wasn't his full self in terms of probably his quickness and his connection with Rodgers there. So now if you look at just the route running and everything, this is I think a good matchup for Davante Adams with a wide receiver that's uncoverable, I think. And then again, going back to Aaron Rodgers, I think it's going to be a high volume, high efficiency attack. And I think he's going to be able to light them up pretty good. So this should be a pretty high-scoring affair. So I do love Rodgers here, and I think he's way too cheap on DraftKings at 6,500. On FanDuel, those top three guys are a little bit more bundled up together in pricing, so it's not as big a discrepancy in pricing. But on DraftKings, Aaron Rodgers is way underpriced. And then so obviously you would pair him with Davante Adams. Now, the other guys get a little more risky. Allen Lazard came back, had a strong game last week, but that also makes his ownership really high. People are going to be chasing that Lazard game now, and Lazard's getting the most snap share, so he is going to be the most reliable target. So I do like Lazard. From there, it's interesting, though, that Marquez Valdez-Scantling is one of the best deep shot receivers when he actually catches the ball. So he's the ultimate DFS, GPP play, because if he does catch a couple of those deep passes, he's going to hit you with a big game. But I also noticed he's been splitting snaps with Equanimeous St. Brown as well. So when he's splitting some snaps, he's not out there as much, but he did have 8 targets last week. So I would say if you're taking a GPP shot and you want to connect it, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I think, is the best guy outside of Adams and Lazard. And I think you can stack multiple receivers with Rodgers in this game because of the high volume that they're going to have in the passing attack. And then, of course, you have Tunyon, who also looks like he's in a pretty good spot here to get a lot of work in the passing game, and he's super cheap as well. So Tunyon is looking like a good play. And I initially wasn't sure about Aaron Jones for obvious reasons. By far, one of the best run defenses in the league, if not the best, especially with Vita Vea back. But when you look at Aaron Jones, he's a pretty good receiving back. I think that they will game plan to get him more involved and basically line him up as a wide receiver more and still give him passes out of the backfield. Tampa Bay is not good. Their linebackers are not good in coverage against running backs, and Aaron Jones is a mismatch. He's just way too quick and way too fast. So they're going to look to get Aaron Jones on those linebackers, even though Tampa Bay's linebackers are really good, like Devin White. They're ranked among the worst for pass coverage. So they're really weak. They've given up a ton of passes this year, one of the worst in the league for giving up passes to running backs. So that's where Aaron Jones can get the job done. He can, I think, get actually good volume here. So I look for a potential of 6 to 8 catches and pretty good yardage and potentially receiving touchdowns here. And then he just gets a little bit of work in the running game, maybe breaks one long one or gets one goal line carry, you know what I mean? So that's where Aaron Jones can get it here. But I know that a lot of people aren't wanting to pay up that much for him. But I think he can get it done here. He's obviously the most talented, probably running back on this slate. And even though it's a tough matchup, you might get him at a little bit lower ownership. But I think he's going to get it done in the receiving game here. So you can pair him with Rodgers, almost like he's a wide receiver, and invest in the Green Bay offense here. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm pretty high on this Green Bay offense in this matchup, especially the passing attack.
Yeah, I'm high on this offense as well, and it feels a little bit funny because they got absolutely smoked when they played in the regular season. It was 38-10, and
Yeah.
it was Rodgers' worst game of the season. Only 160 yards, two interceptions, including a pick six. But there were some differences, like you said. Adams wasn't 100%. Lazard didn't even play that
I
game.
was going to say, I don't think Lazard played. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
So,
Yep, exactly.
and Green Bay's, they're obviously just absolutely rolling, and they learned a lot about themselves that game, and they know that they got to bring their A game. So they're awake and ready to go. And I just love how that passing game is rolling. Rodgers again last week, almost 300 yards, 2 more passing touchdowns, even ran one in. So he's just rolling here, getting to play at home. So I'm going to pair up Rodgers and Adams in most of my lineups. And I like Tunyon as well. It's the 10th best matchup for tight ends, Tampa Bay. The one thing I'm a little concerned about with Tunyon is that his volume's down a little bit. Towards the middle of the season, second half, he was getting at least 5 targets a week, piling up those touchdowns. And lately, he's been getting more like 3 or 4. So it just hasn't been high volume, but I think they give him a couple more here. And I think he can easily pay off what's a really reasonable price tag on both sites, and he's way cheaper than Kelsey. And this is a slate where I think you can go 2 tight ends again, and he's certainly in the mix for me. With Jones, I mean, I think you make a great point. If they game plan that way, Jones could be a good GPP play if he's going to catch several passes. I don't want to play him though. I mean, this is the number 1 rushing defense in terms of yardage allowed, number 2 in terms of fantasy points allowed, and he's just that much more expensive than really the rest of the running backs. So I'd rather pay up with the pass catchers on this slate and pay down a little bit with the running backs.
But and for the reason that I agree with all that. But that's why I want to play him. I always say if you're just looking at the DraftKings board here and you see he's the most expensive guy, and it's hard to fit him in there with you're trying to pay up, and then you see opponents rank red first, which is the absolute worst matchup, right? I mean that does affect ownership. People are going to run from that for good reason, but I don't think they're accounting. he could be heavily involved in the passing game there, and make some huge plays here. So, but no, but I also agree with your point. I mean, it's a brutal matchup, and he might not be able to get it going, but I mean, he's a weapon for them, and he's a mismatch. So I think that he could get it done. And if he has a breakout game, especially in a full PPR site, that could create a huge edge for you, because he could come in at pretty low ownership here.
Yeah. And the other problem there is AJ Dillon's getting involved too. He's getting some carries, and so the volume isn't quite there. So it's a tough one. But that's why there are thousands of lineups in these contests, and you never know what the right mix is going to be. So that's why we love it. Now, before we get to game 2, Shane, we want to present this offer to you from betus.com.pa. It's tremendous if you're into sports betting. Check this out.
Listen up, sports bettors. It's go time, so put down the beer and make every sporting event more exciting by putting stakes on the line. Earn bragging rights over friends as you rake in the cash from each week's betting action, but don't settle for any other book. Choose America's favorite sportsbook with over 25 trusted years in the industry. You need a sportsbook with integrity and longevity, and most importantly, a sportsbook that pays. BetUS has your game with action on football, baseball, and basketball, MMA, golf, horses, and even esports. No other sportsbook welcomes newcomers like BetUS with their jaw-dropping sign-up bonuses. Now we have the best book in the industry teamed up with the best DFS provider in the industry. Make your first deposit of $149 at betus.com.pa with promo code CoachTalk and receive a free membership with DFS Coach Talk with full access to our DFS lineups in NBA, NFL, PGA, and MLB, the best in the biz. Sign up today to make straight bets, future bets, prop bets, entertainment bets, live bets, and more. No other sportsbook in the industry is committed to their users like BetUS. So sign up now and get on the winning side of the ball.
Welcome back, and thank you to BetUS for extending that offer to our listeners. Again, use the promo code CoachTalk, and you have to be somebody making your first time deposit at betus.com.pa. And again, the tremendous aspect of this offer is that you get to make that deposit of $149. Use it for your sports wagering purposes, but you also get a free membership with us all the way until April 1st. So you get all of our lineups in all of our sports. So you get to be with us for the rest of the NFL season with the Super Bowl. And then you get our daily NBA lineups. And we give out full lineups on Fanduel, cash lineup, a GPP lineup, and then the DraftKings coaches clipboard on DraftKings, and then full Yahoo lineups as well. So jump in with us. We'd love to have you. If you have any questions, reach out to us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. All right, Shane, game 2, which is scheduled to kick off at 6:40. And this one, again, will be in Arrowhead as the Chiefs, as the number 1 seed, play host to the number 2 seed in the AFC, the Bills. And this is another rematch game. These teams played in week 6. Kansas City won that one 26-17 in Buffalo. And it was a rain game. So it was a little bit of a different scenario in terms of conditions. There's a lot of running that day. And we'll get your take on if that will repeat. But first, the injury news on the Bills side. Moss, of course, is out. And then Gabriel Davis is questionable with an ankle injury. We are recording this late on Saturday night. So we're not sure about his availability right now. But they have made Kenny Stills active. So there's a chance Stills will be in, Davis will be out. And as of right now, Stills is not on the slate on DraftKings or Fanduel. So keep that in mind. On the Chiefs side, our man Mahomes here, coming back, of course, from the concussion and the toe injury that you mentioned. So he's a little bit less than 100% for sure. You got to figure with that toe issue. CEH, questionable with the hip, but he's been practicing this week, so we expect him to play. We expect Le'Veon Bell to be out. He's listed as questionable, but he hasn't been practicing here recently. And then good old Sammy Watkins, questionable with the calf, but he may just show up here and look for another Super Bowl run. So Shane, with that injury news, take us through game 2 here, with starting with the Bills side.
Yeah, this is looking pretty nice matchups on both sides here, and really high scoring. And yeah, I think that you can run against these teams, but when you have such a great passing attack like like the Bills and Chiefs do. Why run the ball, right? But that could be part of the game plan, though. But yeah, on the Bills side here, I like going back to Josh Allen. I've been a pretty high on Josh Allen, lately, and he hasn't had any monster games lately. But the Baltimore defense, as we discussed last week, it's a tough defense. I think they played him pretty well and limited his upside there. But I think that the Chiefs here, he can exploit them a little bit more. They're pretty decent at pass D. I mean, the Chiefs pass D is like 12th DVOA. I mean, they're decent, but I think that Josh Allen can run around and definitely cause some problems for them. So I look for a bounce back spot here. For Josh Allen. And I think the thing that makes me feel a little better about him is the rushing yards here. So he didn't really run much last week. But if you look at like the wild card week against Indianapolis, 11 attempts for 54 yards and a touchdown. So I think he can have a similar performance. Everything's on the line. It's the AFC Championship, right, to go to the Super Bowl. So Josh Allen is a big, pretty athletic guy, is going to get out and run a little bit more here. And, I always just joke, who's the best goal line back for the Bills, and it's Josh Allen, the best running back for the Bills. So because of that rushing upside and the other guys on the slate, I don't look at Mahomes as having much rushing upside, especially if he has a hurt toe. Obviously, the other guys aren't going to, Brady's not going to run, and Rodgers doesn't really need to, right? So my point is Josh Allen, when you combine the rushing upside in the big play ability in the passing game, the ability to avoid the rush and make big plays off script, he has, great wide receivers. I think that Josh Allen could have a high ceiling game here, and you're going to get him at a discount compared to Mahomes here. So I think that because of the rushing ability, I like the value a little bit more, even though Mahomes is great, obviously. So I like Josh Allen here, and then obviously Diggs has been phenomenal. Probably, him and Devontae Adams, obviously on the slate, the best wide receivers all year. And Diggs' price hasn't really went up that much. It's still pretty stable, like 7,000 on DraftKings. And even 8,300 on Fanduel, I just think it's still mispriced. The Chiefs are pretty good against outside receivers. The Chiefs will mix up. They'll run some zone. They're pretty tough on coverage. But Diggs has just been able to beat every type of coverage all year consistently. And he can get open on broken plays and make huge plays. And his run after the catch ability is great as well. So I like Diggs here, his chemistry with Allen. If you think Allen's having a huge game, then you like Diggs too, which I do. And then you get into the secondary guys. Now, here's what I think is going to happen. John Brown, who's a guy that I've been on, he had a decent game. He's their deep threat. But I think the Kansas City wide receivers are decent at limiting those big plays on the outside. So people will go after John Brown because he's a huge, like, kind of boomer bust type play. He's their deep shot guy, and I think he will make some plays. But the guy that I kind of like is Beasley here. Because Beasley, I like how he came off. I believe he had 0 catches last week, if I remember right. And I like that he's coming off that big fat goose egg, and he's been injured. Because Beasley's the type of guy that comes out of nowhere and catches like 8 or 9 balls, and he's just sneaky in the slot. And I think it's a pretty good matchup inside. I'd rather attack their slot than attack their outside corners, their outside coverage. So I think Beasley in a game where they really need him to be able to move the chains. If they try to focus coverage more on the outside guys, I like Beasley here for a bounce back spot. And my point is you're going to get a little bit lower ownership compared to John Brown for your value stacks, in this game. If you're playing Mahomes, you can bring back one of these value guys like Beasley, for example. So I like Beasley here to have a bounce back game. And then if you want to punt again on the tight end position, Dawson Knox is interesting to me at 4,700 on FanDuel and then 2,800 on DK. It doesn't take much to pay that off. And if you think about it, Kansas City's athletic, their linebackers are not athletic. They're not really good at covering tight ends. And Buffalo knows that. So Buffalo could scheme several plays and actually target Dawson Knox, who's a big athletic guy, kind of like they did with David Njoku last week for the Cleveland Browns. He had a pretty big game, made some big plays as a big athletic tight end. So Dawson Knox, even though the Bills haven't used the tight end much this year, they could certainly use it in this game, and he's so cheap that if he gets 5 or 6 targets, he could pay that off easily. So he's your punt play guy and GPPs here. And then, of course, the running back, it's pretty much the Devin Singletary show. Now, I know the Bills don't really run the ball much, and they're not really good at running the ball, but he's going to be on the field like most of the time, and he is a quick little playmaker, and I think that he should be able to, especially if they're playing from behind, he should be able to get some work done in the receiving game here. So for those reasons, again, I like Singletary here. And if you think about Singletary last week, yeah, he didn't produce big, but he was going up against that Buffalo front. It was really stout against the run. I think they can get a little bit more running room against Kansas City here, and I think they can get mismatch on those slow linebackers for Kansas City in the passing game. So I like Singletary for another pretty big performance, just because I know he's the guy and he is kind of a playmaker. So even though they don't use the running back a lot, it's only he's going to get all the touches pretty much in the passing and running game. So I like Singletary. So as you can see, I'm pretty high on this Buffalo offense. I'm pretty high on this game in general.
Okay, yeah. So for me, a similar viewpoint on the passing attack here with Diggs. It's just week after week, you can't shut him down. He just finds a way. He's got huge volume. He was good against them in the regular season matchup, even though Allen was low volume and low yardage, 6 for 46 with a touchdown for Diggs. He just gets it done all the time. And, they're going to keep feeding him here in the playoffs with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. And I like your call with Beasley. Like you said, after the goose egg, it sounds like he's a lot healthier this week than last week, and he needs to be healthy. He's banged up with a limited knee. That kind of cuts him in half with his potential. So Beasley makes sense here. You can save some money with him. Knox, the punt play, that's just a tough one because it is a great matchup. You can beat KC with the tight ends, but they just don't use him much. So you got to hope that they really make it a point to do that and game script some plays for him. And Singletary, last week was a perfect example of how you see a game plan where they just did not want to even try to run against Baltimore, which was smart. Yeah. Their strength is passing the ball, and they didn't want to try to run against that, and they didn't. Singletary only got 7 carries, and I think it was, 1 before halftime? So they weren't trying to run it, but they very well will try more to run it here. And so he's playable to me. I'm not thrilled about him, really in large part because he doesn't have much touchdown upside. Like you said, Allen is the goal line back. Singletary only has 2 rushing touchdowns all season. Despite having
it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, right. Well,
that's my Singletary take.
Guy to have over 700 yards rushing and only 2 touchdowns on the ground. That's just not good. So, it's just tough to really think about a ceiling game from Singletary. So, I'm not expecting that. Let's shift over to the Kansas City side. What are your thoughts here with the Chiefs? Is it going to be Mahomes and Watkins again with the playoff success? Are you looking more at one of these studs with Hill or Kelsey?
Yeah, I think it's hard to fade both Hill and Kelsey, and that's going to be the tough decision here. Mahomes is interesting because how's his toe? Is he going to be mobile enough to move around? Does that affect his mechanics and his footwork? I think Mahomes is still going to be okay here. I think he's going to get quite a bit of volume. I think that Kansas City is probably going to run the ball more, but they're still going to have to keep up, and both these teams have a high-powered offense. I think that if you look at the Buffalo Bills, I think they're a pretty good pass defense. But if you look at them over the last towards the end of the regular season and the playoffs, they haven't played a really good passing attack. They had to go up against Phillip Rivers and Lamar Jackson. Both of those guys are not really that great in terms of passing quarterbacks. Okay, at this point. And then they went against, Miami in week 17. They went up against New England, who quarterback struggled. The week before that, Denver. So it's been a while since they faced a good quarterback, is my point there. And they're about to see a good quarterback here. So I think that's the thing, is that I like the Bills defense. I think they're pretty solid, but I don't think anyone can stop the Kansas City offense is the problem. So I think you can go. I think Mahomes is in full play here. It's just some of these other guys, like we talked about Aaron Rodgers, and is in a good spot for way cheaper. And then the Josh Allen, I talked about the rushing attack. So that's the only reason, that I'm not. I like some of those other guys just slightly over Mahomes. But Mahomes is there though, and he obviously has a huge ceiling, and he can absolutely just light these guys up. But yeah, I would pair him with Hill or Kelsey. Depending on what you want to do there. Obviously, if you get Kelsey, he's been a monster this year, and you have that advantage at the tight end position. But then you can't pay up on all these expensive wide receivers once you do that, though. That's the problem. So that's a decision you have to make. But yeah, I think Sammy Watkins is going to be popular because his price is $3,800 on DraftKings, and with him in full play, and people know that he performs well in the playoffs, and he's going to probably get the most snap shares, right out of his injury as long as he's healthy. It's just that question mark, like how healthy is he, So I think he's going to warrant ownership because they're going to see that cheap price. And then there's, Mecole Hardman. We don't know if he's splitting time or what his snap share is going to be with Watkins back in the mix. So that's the tricky part there. And then the running backs, again, this is the tough call here. I am leaning more towards CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week, just because I feel like he's going to come back and get a pretty good workload. I think that he could get 15 to 18 touches here, where I think Darrell Williams is going to be more of that like 8 to 10 touch type guy as a change of pace. So I think that they will try to run the ball because you can run it on Buffalo just to kind of help protect Mahomes and have some good balance in the offense. And I think you can exploit Buffalo's run defense here. So yeah, so I look for CEH to have a bounce back game. I know he had a good game against him last time out earlier in the year, but so I think that he's my best play for the running back here for the Kansas City. I know it makes you a little nervous with him coming back, but I mean I think he should be able to get a full workload. He's got, if they win the game and go to the Super Bowl, he's got plenty of time to rest. Then after that, 2 weeks, right? So that's where I'm at with Kansas City. So obviously I love them just as much as you always love Kansas City's offense, but there's a lot of good plays on this slate, right? So
yeah, there are. And you're right. I mean, it's a tough call with that backfield because you figure it's a decent chance Kansas City's going to be playing with a lead. It's a good matchup on paper. They had great success against the Bills in that regular season matchup. And CEH 26 carries for 161. And Darrell Williams still had room for 6 carries and a touchdown. And it was that rain game. I think there was more running in that game because of the weather and the wind. And so I don't think I'd be shocked if we got CEH have over 20 carries again. But I think this is an important area of this slate to really think about. And the challenging thing is, when CEH was questionable in that Denver game, and then he's active and then he doesn't play, it is a gamble. We don't know who's going to get how many touches. Last week, I felt really strongly that Darrell Williams was the play over Le'Veon Bell, and he was. But I don't feel as strongly this week with these two guys. CEH, younger, very talented. They spent a lot of draft capital on him. They saw a lot in him, and he's shown great upside. So, I think it could go either way. I would lean more towards a split. I think, if anything, if I can only use one lineup and pick one of them, I would probably go with Darrell Williams. And one of the reasons is he's $200 cheaper on both sites, and I've made a couple lineups where I need that extra $200. So that's a factor for me as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if CEH outtouched him and had a bigger game. It's just a risky situation. That's the bottom line. You got to know that going in. With the pass catchers, I'm leaning a little bit more here with Kelsey over Hill. This is a great matchup here with tight ends against the Bills. We saw the Colts have a lot of success in that first round playoff loss. And, Kelsey was terrific against them in the regular season, 2 touchdowns. So I'm leaning Kelsey here a little bit, but I do think Hill could surprise because you can beat the Bills in the slot. And he's just got that massive ceiling in a heartbeat. He's had some monster games this year. So I'll probably go with one of those guys in most of my lineups, and then maybe a second Kansas City receiver. I don't think you need to do that, especially if you go with one of the running backs. But it's kind of fun to play around with it because, there's you're going to have to make a decision where one of those guys is an option that you could look at, and with Mahomes, I think with Mahomes, the other point I want to make here with this offense is that he's feeling a little bit more like a GPP option to me this week. In general on this slate, I feel pretty good about Rodgers. And then Mahomes, with the toe, with the concussion, with the good, running back matchup here, I think he will be lower owned, but he could come out and throw for 350 and 3 and just explode. So I'm going to have to make a couple lineups with Mahomes in a GPP setting.
Yeah, I mean, you never know when you could go for 300 plus and 4 touchdowns easily. Yeah, and then you never know when Tyreek Hill's going to get that monster game either. So
right.
I mean, a lot of people are thinking Tyreek Hill's going to be shut down by Tre'Davious White, who's a great corner, but I mean Tyreek Hill moves all over the formations, mostly in the slot, so he avoids a lot of that Tre'Davious White matchup. So so I think that's where it just you can't cover him. They're too creative and he's just too fast. And so yeah, Kelsey's more safe, but Tyreek Hill's more upside here. I mean, obviously Kelsey has upside, but he's not quite he's not gonna break off a 60, 70-yard touchdown in most cases. So
right, you're not gonna get 269 and 3 out of him.
Hill,
and
like 1.5 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Oh man, that was phenomenal. So man, it's going to be a great Sunday. If you have any questions, reach out to us on Twitter. We're at DFS Coach Talk. You can find Shane at DET Sports Shane. I'm at Language Olympic, and the coach is available at JOESARVADI. Wherever you're listening, we'd love a thumbs up, 5-star review. This is a free podcast. We'll have another one for you for the Super Bowl. And then on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like. We'd appreciate that. We've got 7-day-a-week NBA podcasts out right now. So make sure to tune into those. Hit the alert button so you know when those post. It's usually right around 1 or 2 o'clock Eastern. So just after lunchtime, give you plenty of time to get a early build on the NBA slate every night. So we invite you to join us there. Shane, any final thoughts here?
No, I would say just enjoy Championship Sunday. I mean, like I said, I don't take this for granted. I think just the matchups and what's at stake here. This is some of the greatest, football to watch, and, we've waited all year for this and we made it here and we're excited. It's going to combine it with the DFS lineups and then what's at stake with these matchups. This is going to be fun.
Can't wait. So love to have you join us for the lineups. If you're not into the sports betting, by the way, and you want to get the full lineups from us on Fanduel, just go to our website, dfscoachtalk.com, and sign up for a membership there. We'll send you an email, get you into our Discord, and we're growing every week, so we'd love to have you join the mix with us. All right, great work, Shane. We'll wrap it up here and look forward to seeing everybody prior to the Super Bowl. So on behalf of Shane Caldwell and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.